For more than a century, the Sagrada Familia has been known as the world's most famous unfinished building. Generation after generation watched its towers slowly rise above Barcelona's skyline, while construction crews continued work on a project that seemed destined to never be completed. Wars, financial crises, political turmoil, and even a global pandemic threatened to stop the project countless times. Yet somehow it survived them all. Now, after 144 years of construction, the Sagrada Familia has reached a historic milestone. Not only is it finally nearing completion, but it has also become the tallest church in the world. What started as a small religious project in the 19th century has evolved into one of the greatest engineering and architectural achievements ever attempted. So how did this extraordinary building take more than a century to construct? And why is the world suddenly talking about it again? This is the incredible story of the Sagrada Familia. The story begins in 1882. At the time, Barcelona was rapidly growing, and a group of religious supporters wanted to build a new church dedicated to the Holy Family. The original design was relatively conventional, but everything changed just 1 year later. In 1883, a young architect named Gaudi took over the project. Gaudi wasn't interested in creating an ordinary church. He envisioned something the world had never seen before. Instead of following traditional Gothic architecture, he combined religion, nature, geometry, and engineering into a completely unique design. The result looked less like a building and more like a living organism made of stone. Its towers resembled giant sandcastles. Its columns branched like trees. Its facades were covered with intricate sculptures and symbolic details. Every part of the structure was designed to tell a story. But there was one problem. Gaudi's vision was so ambitious that it would take far longer to build than anyone expected. In fact, Gaudi himself understood that he would never live to see it completed. When asked about the slow pace of construction, he famously replied, "My client is not in a hurry." His client, of course, was God. As construction continued, progress moved painfully slowly. Unlike most major construction projects, the Sagrada Familia was not funded by governments or wealthy investors. Instead, it relied largely on private donations. This meant that construction speed depended heavily on available funding. Sometimes work advanced quickly, other times it nearly stopped altogether. Then came an even greater disaster. In 1936, during the Spanish Civil War, parts of Gaudi's workshop were destroyed. Many of his drawings, plans, and models were lost forever. For a project already struggling with complexity, the destruction created enormous uncertainty. Future architects were forced to reconstruct many of Gaudi's ideas using fragments, photographs, and surviving models. Some critics even questioned whether the church should continue at all. Yet construction persisted. Year after year, decade after decade, the project became a symbol of perseverance. But despite all the effort, progress remained slow. Building something this complex using traditional methods required an incredible amount of time and craftsmanship. Then technology changed everything. By the late 20th century, digital technology began transforming construction. Architects could now use advanced computer modeling to study Gaudi's designs with a level of precision that earlier generations could only dream of. Engineers created detailed 3D models. Stone cutting became faster and more accurate. Complex geometric shapes that once took months to produce could now be fabricated far more efficiently. For the first time in the project's history, completion actually seemed possible. Construction accelerated dramatically. New towers rose above the city. The interior was completed. Visitors began experiencing spaces that had existed only in Gaudi's imagination for over a century. Millions of tourists visited every year, generating additional funding that helped push the project forward. The dream was finally becoming reality. Then another challenge arrived. The COVID-19 pandemic severely reduced tourism and temporarily slowed construction once again. For a moment, it seemed as though the project would face yet another major delay. But once restrictions eased, work resumed, and the most important phase of the entire project began. At the center of Gaudi's vision stands the Tower of Jesus Christ. This tower was always intended to be the tallest and most significant part of the entire basilica. For decades, it existed only as an idea. Now that idea has become reality. Recent construction milestones have brought the tower to its full height of approximately 172.5 meters, or about 566 feet. That number was carefully chosen. Gaudi believed that no human-made structure should surpass God's creation. Barcelona's nearby Montjuic Hill rises slightly higher than the tower. As a result, the church remains just below the height of the surrounding natural landscape. With the completion of the tower and its massive cross, the Sagrada Familia officially surpassed Germany's Ulm Minster to become the tallest church in the world. It is a remarkable achievement, not just because of its height, but because of what it represents. After more than a century of construction, the project has finally reached one of its most important goals. The skyline that Gaudi imagined more than 140 years ago now exists. For residents of Barcelona, it marks the end of an era. For architecture enthusiasts, it is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. And for the construction industry, it demonstrates what can be achieved through patience, innovation, and persistence. Despite the headlines, the answer is not exactly. The Sagrada Familia is closer to completion than ever before, but some work still remains. Several finishing elements continue to be developed. The most significant unfinished component is the glory facade, which will serve as the building's grandest entrance. Additional decorative work, surrounding infrastructure, and final details are also expected to continue for years. However, there is an important distinction. The major structural vision of the basilica is essentially complete. The iconic silhouette that defines the project has finally emerged. For many observers, this represents the true completion of Gaudi's dream. After all, architecture is often remembered by its form, and the form is now visible to the world. The building that spent more than a century under construction finally looks complete. That alone is a historic milestone. When Antoni Gaudi died in 1926, only a small portion of the Sagrada Familia had been completed. Few people could have imagined that construction would continue for another 100 years. Fewer still could have predicted that the project would survive wars, economic crises, technological revolutions, and global pandemics. Yet it did. Today, the Sagrada Familia stands as one of humanity's greatest architectural achievements. It is a bridge between centuries, a project built by multiple generations, a masterpiece that transformed from an impossible dream into reality. And perhaps the most remarkable part of all is this. Antoni Gaudi never saw the completed skyline he envisioned, but exactly 1 century after his death, his creation finally rises above Barcelona, taller than any church on earth. After 144 years, the world's most famous unfinished building is finally approaching the finish line.